All right, everybody, welcome back to the CoinTalk Podcast for another deep dive. And today's going to be a good one. We're going to be talking about stablecoins and the future of the US dollar.
Oh, yeah.
This should be fun.
Big topic.
Yeah, big one. So specifically, we're going to be looking at Fed Governor Christopher Waller and how he sees stablecoins as a way to expand the global reach of the dollar.
It's a pretty fascinating idea, right? Like using these digital currencies that are pegged to the dollar as a way to maintain America's influence financially on the world stage.
Yeah, and he's calling for some pretty specific regulation too. He wants a framework that addresses risks, quote, directly, fully, and narrowly, unquote.
Very specific wording.
Yeah, what do you make of that approach? I mean, what's he trying to get at with that kind of language?
I think he's trying to walk a tightrope. He sees the potential downsides of stablecoins, right? The fraud, the money laundering, what happens if they lose their peg to the dollar, the potential for instability. But at the same time, he doesn't want to kill innovation. He wants banks and non-banks to be able to issue them, to create competition and, ultimately benefit consumers.
So he's saying hey, look, there's risks, but there's also a lot of potential benefits.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about those benefits for a second. What does it actually mean for stablecoins to expand the reach of the dollar internationally? What does that look like in the real world?
Well, think about it right now. If you want to send money across borders, it can be a real pain. It's slow. It's expensive. Stablecoins could change all that. They could make those transactions faster, cheaper. They could provide a stable store of value for people in countries with really volatile currencies. We might even see greater financial inclusion. More people around the world being able to access financial services.
That's a big deal, right? I mean, we're talking about some serious potential impact here. And it seems like this isn't just an idea Waller is tossing around. There's real momentum building around regulating stablecoins. I mean, remember early 2024 when Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said he also supported a framework for stablecoins?
Yeah.
What do you think is driving this urgency?
A few things, I think. One, we've already talked about. The potential benefits are becoming clearer. Stablecoins could really change finance in a positive way. Two, the stablecoin market itself is growing like crazy. You've got Tether USDC. Those are huge players. And that growth is only going to continue. And then three, lawmakers are getting involved. And that always adds a layer of complexity and urgency.
Yeah, speaking of lawmakers, the political battle over stablecoin regulation is getting pretty heated. You've got Representative Maxine Waters, a Democrat. She wants shared oversight between the OCC, FDIC, and the Federal Reserve. And then you've got Representative French Hill, a Republican. He wants to give the OCC sole authority over stablecoins. So what do you think are the implications of those two different approaches? I mean, what's really at stake in this tug of war?
I think it comes down to control. Who gets to control this new technology? Waters' approach is more cautious, shared oversight. Maybe more focus on consumer protection and stability. Hill's approach could lead to faster innovation, but potentially with less oversight and greater risk of instability.
So these two different approaches could have a huge impact on how stablecoins actually develop and integrate into the financial system. It's kind of fascinating to watch this all play out.
So, Waller seems to be pretty forward-thinking on this. Do you think he has any thoughts about how stablecoin regulation will affect the current payments landscape? Did he say anything about that? He did, actually. He specifically said it was important to consider how stablecoin regulation would affect the existing payments landscape. He seems particularly concerned about ensuring a level playing field and preventing unfair advantages for certain players. It's a delicate balance, And he seems to be advocating for a thoughtful approach that considers all the possible ramifications.
It sounds like there are a lot of moving pieces here, a lot of potential pitfalls to navigate. But I want to shift gears for a second and talk about what this means for the average person. How could wider stablecoin adoption actually impact our daily lives?
That's the big question, isn't it? Because this regulatory stuff is important, but it can feel kind of abstract. The truth is, stablecoins could change the way we interact with money every single day.
Okay, so paint me a picture.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Imagine sending money to anyone, anywhere in the world, instantly, for a fraction of what it costs now. That's what stablecoins could do. They could also make micropayments more feasible, open up possibilities for content creators, businesses, and for people in countries with unstable currencies, stablecoins could be a much safer way to save and use money.
So we're talking about everything from paying for your morning coffee to sending money to family overseas.
Yeah.
It's like stablecoins could just blur the lines between traditional finance and crypto.
Exactly. And that raises some big questions. What happens if stablecoins become so widely used that they start to challenge traditional banks? Could we see a shift in power within the whole financial system?
That's a really interesting thought, and it's not totally impossible. Stablecoins have some advantages over banks: faster transactions, lower fees, greater accessibility.
Right, but we can't forget the risks. What happens if a stablecoin issuer fails or loses its peg to the dollar? What about fraud, money laundering? These are all things regulators are dealing with. It's not an easy balance.
That's that classic dilemma, right? Foster innovation but protect consumers.
Yeah.
And this doesn't just affect individuals. Businesses could be impacted too. Imagine companies being able to pay internationally so much easier, or raise money through stablecoin offerings.
Absolutely. And don't forget governments. We're already seeing countries thinking about launching their own central bank digital currencies, CDCs, basically stablecoins issued by a central bank. Huge implications for monetary policy and financial stability.
It's like stablecoins are shaking up the entire financial system.
It really is.
It's a lot to take in, and we're just scratching the surface. But that's what makes this so interesting. It's always changing, always something new to learn.
That's why it's important to stay informed. The more we understand about stablecoins, the better we can navigate this new financial world.
Couldn't agree more. And that's what we're here for, to give you the insights you need to stay ahead of the curve. Speaking of staying ahead of the curve, let's talk about access. Who's going to have the power to issue and control these stablecoins? Will it be a few big institutions, or will there be opportunities for smaller players to get involved?
That's a big one.
Right.
It goes to the heart of the centralization versus decentralization debate, a huge theme in the crypto world.
Exactly. And it's a tricky issue with stablecoins. On one hand, having a few big regulated issuers could provide stability, reduce the risk of fraud, but it could also concentrate power, stifle innovation.
For sure.
It's like we're trying to find that sweet spot between stability and innovation, regulation and accessibility. And honestly, it's not clear what the right answer is yet. It's still changing so much.
And that's what makes it so exciting. We're seeing the birth of a new financial system. The choices we make now will have consequences for a long time.
It's like we're writing the rules of the game as we play, which is why it's so important to stay informed to be part of the conversation. You know, earlier we talked about stablecoins potentially making the US dollar even stronger as the world's reserve currency. That's a pretty big implication.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If stablecoins become widely used around the world, it could cement the dollar's dominance in global finance. People in other countries using US dollar-backed stablecoins for everyday purchases?
Yeah.
That's a lot of power for the US.
It's like the US dollar goes digital and just expands its reach massively. But what about other countries? Will they want in on this? Could we see a digital currency arms race with different countries launching their own stablecoins or CBDCs?
I think it's definitely possible, and that competition could be a good thing. It could drive innovation and lead to better services for consumers as different issuers try to stand out.
So more choices, more innovation. That sounds good. But wouldn't that also make the global financial system more complex, more fragmented? How would all these different stablecoins and CBDCs work together?
That's the million-dollar question. Regulators and policymakers are going to have to figure out how to handle that complexity, how to make sure different systems can work together. It's going to be a tough but really interesting process to watch.
We've covered a lot today, haven't we? Waller's vision, the politics, the potential impacts on our lives, and even the global implications. It's clear stablecoins could completely change how we think about finance.
And we're just getting started. The stablecoin world is constantly evolving. Got to stay informed and engaged.
That's why we're here, to help you make sense of it all. If you want to learn more about stablecoins and the future of finance, check out our YouTube channel, CoinTalk Podcast. We break down these complex topics into easy-to-understand pieces.
And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future deep dives. We're always looking at new topics, bringing you the latest insights from crypto and finance.
And if you like this episode, hit that like button, leave a comment below. We love hearing from you and your thoughts on these topics.
And of course, share this episode with anyone who wants to learn more about stablecoins. The more people we can teach about this exciting tech, the better we'll all be able to handle the future of finance.
That's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on CoinTalk Podcast.
See ya.
It sounds like there are a lot of moving pieces here and a lot of potential pitfalls to navigate. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about what all this means for the average person. Like, how could wider stablecoin adoption actually impact our daily lives?
That's the key question, isn't it? Because while all this regulatory talk is important, it can feel pretty abstract. But the truth is, stablecoins have the potential to change the way we interact with money on a daily basis.
Okay, paint me a picture. What does that look like?
Imagine a world where you can send money to anyone, anywhere in the world instantly and for a fraction of the cost of traditional methods. That's what stablecoins could enable. They could also make micropayments more feasible, opening up new possibilities for online content creators and businesses. And for people in countries with unstable currencies, stablecoins could offer a more secure way to save and transact.
So we're talking about everything from paying for your morning coffee to sending remittances to family overseas. It sounds like stablecoins could really blur the lines between traditional finance and crypto.
Exactly. And that blurring of lines raises some interesting questions. For example, what happens if stablecoins become so widely adopted that they start to challenge the dominance of traditional banks? Could we see a shift in power within the financial system?
That's a fascinating question, and it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. After all, stablecoins offer some potential advantages over traditional banking, like faster transaction speeds, lower fees, and greater accessibility.
Right. But it's important to remember that there are also risks associated with stablecoins. For example, what happens if a stablecoin issuer fails or loses its peg to the US dollar? What about the potential for fraud or money laundering? These are all things regulators are grappling with, and it's not an easy balance to strike.
It sounds like a classic dilemma, fostering innovation while also protecting consumers. And it's not just about individual users. Businesses could also be significantly impacted by wider stablecoin adoption. Imagine companies being able to make international payments more efficiently, or even raise capital through stablecoin offerings.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the potential impact on governments. We're already seeing some countries exploring the idea of launching their own central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, which are essentially stablecoins issued by a central bank. This could have major implications for monetary policy and financial stability.
Wow, it's like stablecoins are shaking up the entire financial system as we know it. It's a lot to wrap your head around, and we're just scratching the surface here. But that's what makes this topic so fascinating, right? It's constantly evolving, and there's always something new to learn.
And that's why it's so important to stay informed. The more we understand about stablecoins, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this new financial landscape.
I couldn't agree more. And that's why we're here, right? To provide you with the insights you need to stay ahead of the curve. Speaking of staying ahead of the curve, let's talk about the question of access. Who will have the power to issue and control these stablecoins? Will it be a select few large institutions, or will there be opportunities for smaller players to get involved?
Yeah, that's a big question. It really gets at the whole centralization versus decentralization thing, which is always a big topic in crypto. Oh, for sure. It's a thorny issue when it comes to stablecoins, too. You could argue that having a few big regulated stablecoin issuers could make things more stable, reduce the risk of fraud. But then you also run the risk of concentrating power and maybe stifling innovation.
So it's like we're searching for that sweet spot, right? Between stability and innovation, regulation and accessibility. And honestly, it's not clear what the right answer is. It's all still so new.
Yeah, and that's kind of what makes it so exciting, right? Like, we're literally watching the birth of a new financial system. The choices we make now will have consequences down the road.
It's like we're making the rules up as we go along, which just makes it all the more important to stay informed and be part of the conversation. Earlier we were talking about stablecoins possibly strengthening the US dollar's position as the world's reserve currency. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's huge. If stablecoins really take off internationally, it could really solidify the dollar's dominance in global finance. Imagine people in other countries using dollar-backed stablecoins for their everyday transactions. That gives the US a lot of power.
It's like the dollar goes digital, and its global reach just explodes. But what about other countries? They're not just going to sit back and watch, are they? Could we see like a digital currency arms race with different countries launching their own stablecoins or CBDCs, trying to compete for dominance?
It's definitely a possibility, and that competition could be a good thing. It could push innovation, drive issuers to offer better services to try and stand out.
So more choices, more innovation, sounds pretty good. But wouldn't all of that make the global financial system even more complex, more fragmented? How would all these different stablecoins and CBDCs interact?
That's the big question, isn't it? It'll be up to regulators and policymakers to figure that out. How to manage that complexity, make sure the different systems can talk to each other. It'd be a challenge, but it's going to be fascinating to watch.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from Waller's vision for stablecoin regulation to the politics, the potential impact on our daily lives, and even the global implications. It seems pretty clear that stablecoins could totally revolutionize finance as we know it.
Absolutely. We're just at the beginning of this whole thing, though. The stablecoin world is constantly changing. It's important to stay up to date and engage.
And that's why we're here, to help you make sense of it all. So if you want to learn more about stablecoins and the future of finance, head over to our YouTube channel, CoinTalk Podcast. We break down all these complex topics into easy-to-understand chunks.
Don't forget to subscribe while you're there. That way you won't miss out on any of our future deep dives. We're always exploring new topics and bringing you the latest insights from the worlds of crypto and finance.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, hit that like button and drop us a comment down below. We love hearing your thoughts on these important issues.
And hey, spread the word. Share this episode with anyone who might be interested in learning more about stablecoins. The more people we can educate about this exciting new tech, the better prepared we'll all be for the future of finance.
That's all for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on CoinTalk Podcast.